Hello, everyone. So, first of all, I welcome you again to this Jigyasa Science webinar series. So, I first of all apologize for the technical error which has happened due to some technical issue. So, this Jigyasa Science webinar series, it's all about let's talk science, why, what, and how. So, under this series, there will be lectures by scientists on various topics related to popular science, syllabus topics, science history, ICT in science education, and science biographies. So today we have with us Dr. Mehak Sharma. Dr. Mehak Sharma, who is going to deliver a talk on a very relevant topic, that is COVID-19, due to which we are in lockdown situation in our houses. So Dr. Mehak Sharma, she is an associate professor at IISER Mohali. She did her PhD at University of Medical Center Omaha, USA. She is also a recipient of several prestigious awards. So there is today she is going to talk about this topic of COVID-19. So there are some instruction to the participant. You can put your question in the chat box. So first there will be a presentation for around 30 minutes by the speaker, and your questions will be taken from the chat box and the speaker will answer to all these questions. So maybe in another 10 minutes we will be starting the talk. Thank you very much for your patience. He's streaming as a bonus. Yeah, Dr. Mehak.
Yes, Pooja.
Dr. Mehak, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Pooja. Pooja? Hello?
Yeah, Mehak, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So now
I think you can start with the presentation. Participants can join in between. So it's live.
Okay, fine. So I'm starting now.
Yeah, please start.
200 participants are there, okay?
Okay, all right.
So I request you to slowly do the transition between the slides.
Okay, all right. Noted. Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Pooja. And I welcome all the participants to this live session where I'm going to talk about the biology of this particular virus that has infected a large number of humans, infecting us with a disease called as COVID-19. And I want to also talk about the basis of some of the remedial measures that have been announced by health experts to protect us from the virus. Now, I wanted to really start with this slide that we are witnessing history in making. I mean, what is happening around us, this is unprecedented. Nothing at all which resembles what we are facing today has happened before. The only analogy that can come in mind is the world wars, and many of us were, most of us were not born at the time. And also the world was not connected as it is today. So it's really, the first time that we are witnessing something of this magnitude affecting almost everybody who's there on this planet. And I want to use this particular quote from, one of the writers in the newspaper, that it is a very challenging time, but also an amazing opportunity to unlearn, to relearn, and to test our capabilities and value systems. So with that, let me give you an example of the context of what we are doing. And my aim in this talk today would be to explain you the biology of coronaviruses, how they cause infection in our body, and also explain the basis of some of the remedial measures which are recommended by the World Health Organization and the health experts to protect us. So just to give you a context of the things, I want to show you this slide. What you are looking at is, this tube which contains 7 ml of a culture of the bacteria, and this bacteria is called as Escherichia coli, or in short, E. coli. So what you're looking at is 7 ml of culture of this bacteria. And here is the question. Guess the total number of bacteria in this tube. Are they equal to the number of people in Mohali, the number of people in Punjab, the number of people in India, or the number of people in the world? Well, maybe many of you will be surprised to know that only 7 ml of this culture of the bacteria contains more bacteria than the number of people in the world. The number of people in the world are only 7 billion, but here we have approximately 100-fold more bacteria in this culture tube. So this is how small the microorganisms are. All right. And this is bacteria. The virus is even smaller. How small? Well, virus is almost 10 times smaller than a typical bacterial cell. Okay. So let me go on to the next slide to explain this to you better. Let us look at what are some of the small things that you know. We are talking about very tiny things, small things that you can actually see by your naked eye. If you look at the width of your finger, it is 1 centimeter. The smallest measure on a scale is 1 mm. Now do one thing, pull out your hair and just pluck it. Well, not from the root, but maybe from the end, so that it doesn't hurt you. The width of this strand of hair is 0.1 mm. Okay. Just look at it and realize that the width of the strand of hair is 0.1 mm. How small is the virus? The virus is approximately 1,000 times smaller than the width of the strand of hair. Okay, bacteria is 10 times as big as virus, and our blood cells are 10 times as big as the bacteria. And therefore, just read these numbers. You can actually fit 1 lakh viruses across your finger, or 10,000 viruses on the smallest measure on a scale, and 1,000 viruses can fit along the width of your hair, which is 0.1 mm. Realize that 1,000 are the people on a passenger train. Okay, so viruses are very, very, very tiny, and I want you to kind of visualize this in your mind, that this is how small the virus is. Okay, all right. So with that, now let us try to go on and see that what exactly is a virus. When we talk about scientifically, what is this entity that we call a virus? Well, a virus is made of 3 kinds of molecules. It has an outer part, which we call as a membrane, and it is composed of fat, or we can scientifically call this as lipids. Okay, so that is the outer part of the membrane of the virus. There are proteins that are embedded, that are present in this membrane. So that is the second component, the proteins, which make the virus envelope. And we call this virus envelope, as a scientific term, we call it as capsid. Okay, so first are the fats or lipid. Second component is the proteins. And the third component is the genetic material of the virus, which could be a molecule called as DNA, deoxynucleic acid, or RNA, ribonucleic acid. All right. The genetic material enables the virus to make more copies of itself, and also to make the proteins that are important for the virus function and replication. Okay. So these 3 components make up the virus. And maybe many of you know this from your textbooks, that viruses do not have any internal cellular compartments, unlike our cells, which have a mitochondria or they have a nucleus. Virus do not have any cellular organelles, and it's very, very important to note this, that they are not considered as living outside of the host cell. What it means is that the virus is not able to divide and make more copies of itself if it is not present inside a host cell, and also it is not doing any metabolic activity. So we regard viruses as not living when they are outside the host cell. They can only divide and increase their numbers and produce the proteins that they produce inside a host cell, such as a human cell. Okay. The other point that I want you to know is that viruses that infect humans, and this is easy to remember, they are called as human viruses. They are considered along with the general class of animal viruses. Okay. So viruses that infect humans called as human viruses, and we come in the category of animal, they come in the category of animal viruses. Viruses that infect bacteria are referred to as bacteriophage or phage, just phage. And viruses that infect plants are called as plant viruses. Okay. Now, with that background, I want to now directly move on to, well, the coronavirus. Okay. Coronavirus is a family of, it's a family of viruses. It is not one organism, but it's a collection of viruses, and I'll come to it. Why are they called as coronavirus? This is primarily because these viruses have these proteins which are kind of sticking out. You might have seen many images of this in the newspaper. So these green spokes, dark green spokes that are coming out, that gives an appearance of a crown. The virus is wearing a crown. And so we call them as corona, which means crown, and we call this as the coronavirus. Now let us quickly look at the three components that we talked about. So here is the lipid membrane, in this green. Okay, the lipid membrane, which is labeled, that's the outermost part. This particular coronavirus family has generally 4 proteins, which are labeled as this membrane protein, the nucleocapsid protein or N, the S protein, which is the spike protein, and the envelope protein. And this strand that you are seeing inside the virus, that is the RNA. So coronaviruses are RNA viruses. Their genetic material is ribonucleic acid. Okay, and it's actually big. The RNA size of this RNA is actually pretty big. It's somewhere ranging from 26,000 to 32,000 bases of RNA, which is big. And when we talk about viral genomes, just look carefully at this spike protein and we will come to it. Now, from reading the newspapers, maybe your thought is that there is only one coronavirus in this world. That's not true. Okay. But before that, let's quickly come to this. The woman who first discovered the coronavirus, who took the first images of these coronavirus, was June Almeida. She was a virologist, and she took the first images of coronavirus using an electron microscope. And this was in 1965. So you can now see the real electron microscopic images of this virus, and you can see this crown-like appearance, those spokes coming out of the viral membrane. Okay. And when they first saw it, that is how the nomenclature came around to be coronavirus. Okay. So we think that there is only one kind of coronavirus that is infecting us right now. That's not true. Coronaviruses mainly affect birds and animals, and prior to 2019, we know of 6 coronaviruses that can infect humans, and they can cause respiratory diseases. So I'm giving you here the names of these. The HCOV stands for human coronavirus, and then there is a number with it. Okay. I have put in bold 2 particular coronaviruses, the SARS coronavirus and the MERS coronavirus. The reason that I've put this in bold is that it is very similar to the virus that is infecting us right now. And both SARS and MERS, they cause severe respiratory syndrome in humans. Okay. This was prior to 2019. In December 2019 or early 2020, a new coronavirus came into well, we came to know about it, and the experts named it as SARS coronavirus 2 because it was very similar to the SARS coronavirus. So the virus that is currently infecting large number of humans is this SARS coronavirus 2, and it causes a severe respiratory syndrome in humans. So SARS stands for severe acute respiratory syndrome, and this disease has been named as COVID-19. Okay, and why it is called as COVID-19? Well, CO stands for corona, VI for virus, D for disease, and 19 for the year that it was first identified. So COVID-19 is the disease, and it is caused by this particular virus, SARS-CoV coronavirus 2, and it is very similar to the SARS coronavirus that infected humans back in 2003. Okay, all right. So now coming on to what is the origin of these coronaviruses that are infecting humans? Maybe you already know about it, or maybe you'll be surprised to know about this, that actually human coronaviruses, specifically the ones which are highlighted in this red box, they originated in, they came in from bats. So bats, because of their habitat, they have a very, very diverse habitat, and they contain a large collection of viruses in themselves. Okay, and animals or humans, if they come in very, very close proximity to the bats, and they are coming in their habitat, coming in contact with the bats, it could lead to transmission of these viruses from the bats to, let us say, an intermediate organism, and from these intermediate organism it can lead to transmission into humans. So for instance, the SARS coronavirus is thought to be transmitted to an organism called as civet cat from the bat, and when humans they come in proximity of these cats, or possibly they are eating them as meat of these civet cats, this leads to transmission of this virus into humans. For the 2019 SARS coronavirus 2, it is thought that the virus actually originated in bats, and then it got transmitted into an organism called as pangolin, which was illegally sold in Chinese markets, and the people who came in contact with these infected pangolins possibly became the first humans to get infected with this SARS coronavirus 2. Okay, now how does this transmission happens? It is thought, and evidence has also proven this, that when the virus moves between one host such as bats to another host such as humans or other animals, it can do so because of changes in the DNA or RNA sequence of that virus. So these changes in the DNA or RNA sequence, they are known as mutations scientifically. And once a virus acquires these mutations, it is capable of infecting a new host such as humans. I want to emphasize that this is a natural random event. Every time this virus is replicating in an organism, there is a chance that it can incorporate a mutation, and with that mutation, the protein that is going to be made will be mutated, and it can give the virus a new capability to infect a new host such as humans. Okay, this is a natural random event that happens at a certain rate in all living organisms. And it is also the basis of Darwin's theory of natural selection, which tells us that survival of the fittest. So what happens is that the virus which has acquired this mutation, it will be able to infect a new host, and therefore its chances of replicating and surviving in a host increases compared to the viruses that have not acquired this mutation. Okay, all right. Now, how does this SARS coronavirus enter into our cells? Okay, Scientists have shown, there is scientific evidence for this, that the spike protein, so these blue projections coming out of the virus, they are the spike protein. So scientists have proven that this spike protein actually binds to a receptor on our cells, and this receptor, you don't have to remember the name, but I'm just telling you this. This is called as ACE2, angiotensin converting enzyme 2. So the spike protein actually binds to this ACE2 protein on our cells, and this allows for the coronavirus entry into our cells. Now, where is this particular ACE2 protein expressed? It is expressed in heart, lungs, kidneys, and gastrointestinal tract. So these tissues become the site for coronavirus entries. That is why coronavirus is able to infect these particular tissues in our body and cause damage to them. Okay. Now, once the virus enters into our cells, what does it do? It starts making more copies of itself. So it uses its RNA to make now more, it makes more copies of itself, more number of proteins of the virus using this RNA as the template. And our cells kind of burst open with the viral load. So you will have millions of viruses in your body by the time infection has been set in. But it also does one another bad thing. Besides making more copies of itself, it causes our immune system to overreact. That means that immune system is going to alarm the body that it has a viral infection, and it will start producing molecules that cause further damage to our body. So the immune system, instead of reacting in a normal fashion, it starts to overreact. And this overreaction causes the damage to our lung tissue in particular, and also to other organs, which leads to the respiratory distress or problems in breathing, and ultimately leads to the multi-organ failure. I want to comment here that in the individuals who are older, this response, the immune system overreaction, is more hyper than in the young individuals. That is why you are hearing reports that the mortality is more high in older individuals than in young people, because the immune system is overreacting more in older people. Okay. All right. So what is the, it's fine. So this virus is infecting humans. It causes, it uses this receptor for entry into particular tissues. It makes more copies of itself. It causes our immune system to overreact. But what is such a big problem about this particular disease? Why is the whole world paying attention to this for such a long time? Or in other words, what is the big problem? Here is it. The big problem is that this virus can undergo human to human spread or human to human transmission. All right. That means if there is one infected person, that person can infect other individuals with whom he comes in contact with. Okay. How does it spread? Now, these numbers may look scary to you, but this is what it is. In total, an infected person can release up to 100 trillion viruses during the course of their infection. I want to emphasize that this number is not, this may not be very accurate, but this is in general, millions and millions of these virus particles can be released by one individual over the course of their infection, which can last up to 14 days. And this is proven, the lower part is proven, that every time we cough or sneeze, we release up to approximately 40,000 droplets from our respiratory system. Now, if you are infected with these virus, each of these droplets can contain 10,000 virus particles. Okay, imagine this. Every time that you are coughing or sneezing, you're releasing 40,000 droplets into the air, and each of these droplets can contain 10,000 virus particles. Now, most of these droplets will be large enough that they will quickly settle down due to gravity, okay, within minutes, but few may linger in the air longer. Both are problem. The tiny droplets can infect another person if you have, if you're standing very close to the infected person, and also the heavy droplets that have settled down on surfaces. And if you have touched those surfaces and then your face and your eyes, then you can get infected by the coronavirus. Okay. Now, do we know that how much infection one person can spread? Okay. We are entering now into a science of disease modeling. This is called as epidemiology. Please look it up on the Google. Epidemiology. Okay, so epidemiologist, scientists who study, who model diseases, who model the population dynamics, they use a number called as R naught, which is the basic reproduction number, which describes that what would happen if an infectious person enters into a fully susceptible community. That means nobody in that community is immune to this virus. Okay. For instance, in the example that I'm showing in this slide, this person who is infected, shown in red, is able to infect two other individuals. So the R naught for this particular disease is 2 in this example. All right. How do scientists calculate R naught? Well, it is very complicated maths, but it primarily depends upon, how much contact a person is coming into and what is the duration of this contact. So it depends on these parameters. Okay. Now, interestingly, if R naught of a disease is less than 1, the disease is going to disappear from the population, because an infectious person will transmit the disease only to fewer than one other susceptible person. So if R naught is less than 1, the disease will automatically die out its natural death, because it will not get transmitted to many people. Okay. On the other hand, if R naught for a disease is greater than 1, well, then automatically the disease is going to get spread. Okay. So if R naught is greater than 1, we know that the disease will spread. From the data that we have thus far of the number of people who have been infected and the original data on how many infected individuals were there, scientists were able to determine that for COVID-19, the R naught is approximately between 2 and 2.5. Now, I want to emphasize here that this number is going to change ultimately when we have a good idea of how many people actually are infected. In many countries, including India, we do not have this data that how many individuals are currently infected. And so this R naught number will change, but from the data that we have till now, it suggests that the R naught for COVID-19, the reproduction or the number of individuals that one person can transmit the virus to, is between 2 and 2.5. Okay. And if you read my upper statement, if R naught is greater than 1, the disease will spread. So this also means that if we do nothing, then the virus would follow an exponential growth and it will infect until large majority of the population actually develops immunity against the virus. So this graph will keep going up and then will come down as the people develop immunity against this virus. So it is going to show us an exponential growth curve with time. Okay, because the number of individuals that one person can infect is between 2 to 2.5. So it's going to spread. Now this brings me to how can we control the coronavirus? Okay, how can we control this infection from spreading? All right. Now the rest of my slides, you have heard them. You have heard these precautions, these protective measures in one way or the other, maybe on your mobile phones, in your newspapers, on the social media, on Google. You have been hearing about this. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them, but I will just briefly mention the scientific basis of some of these protective measures. Okay. What is important to know is, the first important point is, there is currently no vaccine to prevent coronavirus, COVID-19. There is currently no vaccines. Okay. The second point is then even more important. The best way to prevent this illness is to avoid, I'm underlining this, is to avoid being exposed to this virus. Okay? We have discussed that the virus is spread mainly from person to person through respiratory droplets, which are produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes or talks. But what is also now, troubling is that recent studies have suggested that this infection can spread by people who are actually not showing any symptoms. We call such individuals as asymptomatic. Asymptomatic. And that is a big problem. That means that everybody has to take precaution, because you may not be aware that you are carrying this particular virus. You may not have any symptoms of respiratory distress or even fever or fatigue. Okay. So what are the precautions? Well, this precaution came out recently. Our government has also emphasized this very strongly. We need to cover our mouth and nose with a cloth face cover when we are around other people. Okay. The reason why you want to wear a mask is because it is possible that you are one of these asymptomatic individuals. You could spread the COVID-19 to others even if you do not feel sick. If you are wearing a cloth face cover, it prevents your respiratory droplets to reach other people. Okay. It's very important that we should not use a face mask which is meant for a healthcare worker. Okay, we do not need an N95 mask. Rather, a cloth face covering is enough. Okay, you can read more about this on many health websites and Google, and it's also written in detail in here. Okay, all right. Everyone should clean your hands very often. Okay, you have been hearing this now for the past, I don't know, maybe 4 months or so. Wash your hands. Wash your hands. That means you have to use soap and water for at least 20 seconds, especially after you have been in a public place, okay, or after coughing or sneezing. If you do not have soap and water, use a hand sanitizer and avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Now, I want to quickly come into this, that why soap works. Okay, I found this beautiful quotation in New York Times. At the molecular level, the soap breaks things apart. At the level of society, it helps to hold everything together. Okay, so let us see, what does the soap do? Well, on the right, you are seeing the soap molecules. So the soap molecules are these, these squiggly structures. They have a small dot, which is the hydrophilic head group or water loving. So hydrophilic, water loving part of the soap. And each soap molecule has this long tail, which is called as the hydrophobic or water hating tail. Okay. So individual soap molecules look like this. And the coronavirus, remember, it has a lipid membrane. It has an outer fat membrane. So fat is nothing, but it is another example of a soap-like molecule. So the membrane of this virus also resembles the soap molecules. Now, as soap comes in contact with the lipid membrane of the virus, it will wedge its tails, it will put its tails, the water hating tails will kind of wedge inside the virus and create a pore, a hole, and it will basically pull out the virus membrane apart. So the virus will rupture, and that is how the soap causes the rupturing of this virus and reduces infection. And it is very similar to how soap traps the dirt particle, the oil particles which are on our clothes, and removes them. Okay. All right. So this is why washing our hands for some time, for 20 seconds, is very critical, so that this event can happen efficiently, that the soap molecules can come in proximity of the viral membrane and can cause the rupturing of the virus. Okay. We have heard this. Well, our Prime Minister had announced the lockdown so that people stay home as much as possible. And the reason why we are doing that is because you want to put physical distance between yourself and other people. Okay, this has been called as physical distancing or social distancing. Now, why is that very, very important that we do not allow the virus to spread? Okay. In scientific, in epidemiological studies, we call using this protective measure of physical distancing as flattening the curve. Okay. Now look at this curve. Look at this curve. The y-axis is daily number of cases, the cases being reported every day. And the x-axis is time since the first case. And look at this dotted line that is there. The dotted line tells you the capacity of your healthcare system. Okay. Now, the curve which is in this darker color, this dark orange color, these are the number of cases that will happen every day. So exponential growth. Remember, the virus is being transmitted to every 2 individuals from an infected individual. So exponential growth, 2 to the power n, where n is the number of times this infection is being passed on. So the infection will happen without social distancing measure like this. The numbers are going to cross many folds above our healthcare system capacity. Okay, and then it will come down, obviously, because everybody will get immune to it, or some people will succumb to this infection. So the number of cases is going to drop down over time. What happens if you put the physical distancing in place? Now what happens is that the graph starts looking like what we are seeing in gray. Okay, this is the number of cases going to be reported if physical distancing is being practiced by large populations. Okay, we will be below the capacity of the healthcare system, and in one way we would have flattened the curve of this infection. And this is very important, to stay below the line of the healthcare system capacity, which we can do by practicing strongly and dedicatedly the physical distancing measure. Okay. I also want to recommend highly to everyone that please check out this YouTube video of, you just type this on YouTube, what this chart actually means for COVID-19. Just type that phrase, and the link that the video that you get, it is a beautiful animation of how flattening the curve is very effective. Okay. I want to share with you real data of 2 cities. They are both in United States, and we are looking at the data from 1918 infection of this Spanish flu, which was another pandemic that the world faced back in 1918. Why is this data important? Well, one of these cities, which is shown in this black solid line, did not practice physical distancing. And look at the death rate in this particular city, and compare the death rate in the city which very strongly practice the physical distancing. Okay, the dotted line is the data from that city. So clearly, the city St. Louis was able to flatten the curve by physical distancing measure. On the other hand, the city of Philadelphia did not do so, and they actually went above their healthcare system capacity, and obviously then they were no longer able to control the exponential growth of this infection. So this is real data from 1918 Spanish flu infection. And based on all of these evidences, epidemiologists, they have proposed this concept of flattening the curve, and this is now a textbook public health response to epidemics. And this includes COVID-19, okay? Since we do not have a vaccine for this virus, since we know that this virus has spread to now 185 countries and more of the world, so this virus cannot be contained, can no longer be contained. So now the goal of individual countries is to slow the spread, okay? The slowing of the spread of this virus, it allows our healthcare system to function at a certain, at a normal rate. So fewer people are getting sick at once. The healthcare services aren't overwhelmed, and so the death rate decreases. The time that is, in hand for the healthcare workers, it allows them to treat the flood of the patients, and it also allows the researchers to develop vaccines and antiviral therapies. Okay. And so this is why the physical distancing measure has been so strongly emphasized by our government and governments of the world. And everybody should follow the physical distancing measure very, very strongly. Okay. The last protective measure that I just want to say, and you have heard this before, please clean and disinfect surfaces frequently so as to avoid any infectious particle that is there on these surfaces to stay there, and use detergent or soap. If surfaces are dirty, clean them using detergent and soap, which is very effective in rupturing membranes of many infectious agents, including COVID-19. Okay. All right. And finally, I just want to come to this, that is there a vaccine for SARS coronavirus 2? Well, we all know that the answer is no at this point. What is a vaccine? A vaccine imitates this particular pathogen, such as this virus, and it would not harm the host because this vaccine is a weakened pathogen. It is not, it either consists of a part of the pathogen, such as one of its proteins, or even the whole pathogen, but it is weakened. And when the vaccine is injected into us, it prepares our immune system by producing antibodies to fight against this pathogen. Okay. So we know that there are more than 70 vaccines in development in the pipeline all around the world. 3 of them have actually entered into clinical trials. And we are expecting that one of these clinical trials would be completed before the end of this year. But generally, vaccines take 12 to 18 months to come. We have to, test the safety and efficacy of these vaccines by doing clinical trials, which has 3 phases, and the vaccine has to undergo all of these regulatory steps before it can be approved for use by everyone. Okay, so that is going to take time. So since we do not have this protection against this virus for now, we have to follow the physical distancing measure, wearing the mask and frequently washing our hands. Okay. All right. So with that, I want to end this presentation. I want to thank all of you for your attention, and I want all of you to note down this particular website that I am mentioning here. This website has been created by few scientists in India, and it's called as Indian Scientist Response to COVID-19. This particular group is a group of scientists who have come together in this time of crisis to tell the general public in large about the facts about this disease and to bust the myths and the hoaxes that are being spread by social media. So please visit this website. They have wonderful animations and tools to help anybody to understand about this particular disease, and it will give you scientifically accurate information. Okay. So with that, I want to thank everybody for their attention, and I will take few questions that Pooja can guide me to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mehak, for such a nice presentation.
Yeah.
So there are few questions which I picked out from the chat. I think we can take them.
Okay.
So first question is, coronavirus, since there is no vaccine for it, how people are recovering from coronavirus?
Yes. So that is an excellent question. How are we recovering from the coronavirus if there is no vaccine? Well, but we have an immune system. You see, when the virus has infected us, our immune system recognizes this virus as a foreign entity, and it starts its response. So the immune system will produce antibodies against this virus, and those antibodies, as well as other cells which are called as killer T cells. So these cells will kill the infected cells. The antibodies will bind to the viruses and inactivate them. So what is happening in most people, actually majority of the people, will recover from this infection because they have a healthy immune system and they do not have any associated diseases like diabetes or cardiovascular disease. So their immune system is healthy. and it will produce antibodies and other molecules to inactivate the virus. And once that virus is completely inactivated, these people will recover from the viral infection.
Thank you very much. So there is a second question: why COVID-19 is known as COV2? Like many places, it is said as COV2 virus.
Yeah.
Why it is so?
Yes, so it is called as COV2 because before this coronavirus 2, before the SARS coronavirus 2, back in 2003, a virus which is very, very similar to this coronavirus 2 came into being. Okay, so we first saw this severe acute respiratory syndrome in 2003, and the virus was named as SARS coronavirus. So this new entity which has come into being in 2020 is very similar. It is almost, you can say, they are siblings. They are related to each other. So this has been named as coronavirus 2 because the original virus came in 2003, but that was a different. So that that was a different virus, not the same virus. They are different in their RNA sequence.
Thank you, Mehak. So there is one more question. Can you put some light on plasma therapy, which is being used for like as a treatment for COVID?
Yes, sure. So you see, some individuals have become very, very sick from this infection. They are so sick that they cannot breathe on their own, and they have been put on ventilators. So the machine is helping them to breathe even. Okay. Now, such individuals obviously do not have a healthy immune system to protect themselves from the virus. So we want to get the viral infection. We want these people to get rid of the viral infection. So one way to do that is people who have recovered from this virus, in their blood, there will be circulating antibodies for against this virus. Okay, so what you can do is you can take the blood from people who have recovered from COVID-19. You can remove the cells from the blood, only get the plasma part. Okay, with plasma is basically the liquid part. Remove the cells from the blood, take the plasma part which contains all the antibodies against this coronavirus, and inject this plasma which contains antibody into the individuals who are unable to mount an immune response by themselves. And so this plasma will contain antibodies which will inactivate the virus and possibly help in recovery of those seriously ill patients.
Okay, thank you, Mehak. There are many questions related to whether with temperature this coronavirus will go, like with heat in the coming months. So
yeah, there is. So we do not have an answer to that. There is some indication that the virus is infecting countries more which have this ambient temperature of 17 degrees to 22 degrees. In India, it is already 30, more than 30 degrees centigrade. But there is no scientific evidence yet, strong scientific evidence yet to prove that this virus will get inactivated in summer. Yeah.
yeah, Mehak, you are there?
Yes.
Yeah. So there was a question related to the temperature, like with the increased temperature, this COVID will go. Is there any relation, any study related to that with temperature it will go?
No, so I said that no, there is no strong scientific evidence to prove that the virus will become inactivated or will go away on its own with rising temperatures. We do not have any strong scientific evidence to support that.
So there is another question asked by several participants regarding hydroxychloroquine. So
Yes.
how effective is this drug which is being used mainly for the malaria? So how effective is this?
Yeah, so hydroxychloroquine, right now there are some trials being run around the world, including one in India, to see its efficacy. For now, as a prophylactic, as a preventive measure, it is being given to healthcare workers. Okay, I want to emphasize that that ICMR, our Indian Council for Medical Research, has recommended that healthcare workers who are coming in daily contact with patients of COVID-19, they can take hydroxychloroquine as a preventive measure because the medicine has mild side effects. Okay, it has been given before to healthcare workers who deal with malaria patients. But for general public, it is not being recommended. People should not take it if they are not a healthcare worker. They should rather practice the other protective measures of wearing a mask, washing hands, and being at home. Because we do not know of the side effects of hydroxychloroquine completely, and also we do not know how effective it will be against the virus as of now.
Okay, Mehak, there is another question very frequently asked. Why it is taking so much time to develop the vaccine for COVID?
Yes. So, well, the answer to this question is actually it is being done at a very fast rate as compared to any other vaccine in the history of mankind. Okay. Generally, it takes more than, I don't know, more than 2 years, up to 10 years it can take for a vaccine to come into market. We are talking right now about the vaccine coming into being within a year. The reason is that whenever we make a vaccine, we have to assess the safety and efficacy of that vaccine thoroughly, because the vaccine itself can generate an infection, it can cause damage, it can hyperactivate our immune response. So the vaccine has to undergo these regulatory procedures before it can be approved for use in humans. Okay, so for that we do a clinical trial, and the clinical trial has different stages, different phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and generally to complete these
Okay,
phases,
thank you very much, Mehak, for such a nice presentation and addressing all the questions.
yeah.
So thank you so much. Now I also would like to inform the participant that this lecture will also be there in the YouTube channel, and we will be having the next lecture on the career opportunities in science for the students. Like what are the career opportunities, and you know the relevance of science in today's scenario, because science is everything which can resolve the materialistic issues associated with the humans or any living form. So we'll be having next lecture by Dr. Ramanathan on 22nd about the career opportunities in science. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much. Okay, Mehak, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pooja.